Thank you.
Chairman Petrie and members of the A&R Committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify. As I just noted, my name is Pam Thomas, and I'm a senior fellow with the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy. I spent most of my career staffing this committee. I know a lot of you, but some of you are new and you probably don't know me. I started with A&R in 1991, and then I retired in 2016. One of my primary roles over all of the years I worked at LRC was to help you understand the policy implications of the decisions that you make. And I loved my job because I really felt like I was making a difference. I come before you today with this background to ask you to reconsider the practical and policy implications of continuing to move forward with additional income tax cuts that are in House Bill 1. From a fiscal standpoint, as you've heard, things are really good right now. Revenues are strong, the Budget Reserve Trust Fund is at a record level. But that's the case for most states, not just Kentucky. The many billions in federal pandemic and spurred a fast recovery. Inflation is at a higher level than it has been in 40 years. But those causes of higher tax revenues are coming to an end. Forecasters don't predict the same growth going forward, and many fear a recession on the horizon. It's interesting to note that without the income tax, we wouldn't have the significant Budget Reserve Trust Fund that we currently have because the income tax accounted for 47% of the revenues above projections. Last session, you enacted a budget that began to restore some of the funding that has been reduced through the many rounds of budget cuts following the Great Recession and continuing till just a few years ago. You started to address the state workforce crisis by providing significant salary increases with the promise of more, and you made critical investments in many other areas. A great first step to recognizing the importance of investing in the people of the Commonwealth. But as you also know, much remains to be done. There's a critical teacher shortage, affordable child care isn't readily available across our state, the Department of Juvenile Justice and the children it serves are suffering greatly because of their inability to adequately staff their facilities. Much more investment is needed to help the people in eastern and western Kentucky recover from tornadoes and floods. The list goes on and the needs are great. My concern about the continued reduction of the income tax rate is that the formula on which the cuts are based is static, backwards facing, and based on a single year. It doesn't consider the future or the context within which revenues are raised, and the recent elevated collections are temporary and will likely not continue. But as you know, tax cuts are permanent and they will result in a major loss of revenue. The general fund will lose over $1.2 billion annually when the cut goes from 5% to 4% and it's fully phased in, and that takes a little while because of the way the taxes work. For scale, that's more than the $1.1 billion you've appropriated for the entire system of higher education, so it's a huge hit. And for most individuals, other than those in the top 20%, the money they keep as a result of the cut is small. Kentuckians who are under the poverty line will receive no benefit at all from these tax cuts because they don't pay income taxes. Yet the sales tax is a much bigger share of that family's budget than it is for you or I. The typical Kentucky family, those in the middle class, like most of us, will retain between 38 cents and $5 a week from the reduction from 5% to 4%. Hardly noticeable in day-to-day life. So there's a huge gap in the loss of revenues at the state level and what that means that you cannot do compared with the actual benefit to most individuals and families in Kentucky. And you know there's not a lot of other room within other taxes to make up for the lost revenue when that need arises. The only big exemption left in the sales tax is for groceries, and that's one of the few exemptions that makes that tax less regressive. And if you took that up to the full 6%, you'd only make up half the loss of revenue from the sales tax cut. The sales tax rate on our existing base from all purchases would have to be raised to 7.4% to make up the lost revenues, and that would give us the highest sales tax, state-level sales tax in the country. There simply aren't a lot of other places to go to raise revenue in Kentucky. We don't have the huge tourist base like Tennessee, Nevada, and Florida, and we don't have oil and gas like Texas, Alaska, and Wyoming. And I mention those 6 states because they're 6 states that don't have an income tax. And one of the reasons they do without an income tax is because they have these other things that they can do. So it's really important to remember that our economy and where the money comes from in Kentucky is very different from other states, and that's a very important consideration in thinking about as you move forward. If you ask your constituents, both businesses and individuals, what they want and expect from you as the leaders who decide how state dollars are spent, I believe they'll tell you they want good, strong public schools, access to affordable child care, safe drinking water, and roads that don't have potholes. They'll tell you they want their fellow Kentuckians who've fallen on hard times and need help to receive help. And when we all stop and think about it, Isn't that what we all want for ourselves, our families, and each other? I've been part of and observed our state budget process for over 3 decades now, and based on that experience, I think there are significant risks that our state's continued ability to do these things. And I think they'll be severely compromised moving forward by the cuts in our income tax, which is the source of 41% of our general fund revenue. Thanks for your consideration.